Chamber, which is a terrific partner of JobsOhio. Really, one of our key strengths is the network that we have, and we have regional partners like Team NEO in Northeast Ohio, and then the Canton Regional Chamber, Stark County Development Board. That's where the action is, and it's a great pleasure to work with David and the team as we look to create new jobs and get new investment into this area of the state. I also want to thank Gatehouse Ohio Media, who I think is doing a really good job of reporting on the Utica. It's a complex topic, and I frequently see their articles and find that they're relevant and informative, and I think it's great to have their work in this area as well. And thanks to all of you for taking your time. This is a big commitment of time today, and I'm impressed with the group that's here, an outstanding lineup of speakers that David and the team have put together. But thank you, because for us to really take advantage of the Utica opportunity, it's going to take efforts from all of us, whether it's sharing about the public opinion issues that are out there about hydraulic fracturing, or whether it's working together to recruit companies, to welcome companies into our area so that we have the benefit of the economic growth from it. So all of us have an important role to play, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I hope that I can give you couple of new insights today on this topic, and I'd like to just start here by first creating a little context. The context is hard to kind of see which slide I have up. Give you a little context about Ohio, because if we don't have a positive environment in Ohio, we're not going to be successful in recruiting companies related to the opportunities of Utica Shale. Now, clearly the geology is going to drive a lot of that, but most of the other opportunities, the supply chain and the downstream, they're looking first at Ohio. What kind of climate do we have? And I think we got a very positive story to tell here. You know, if you look at today, we have a budget surplus versus a deficit budget just about 3 years ago today. We're very competitive on capital investment, new capital investment. Ernst & Young study showed us at third lowest tax rate in the United States for new capital investment. That's very important in the energy and chemical industries because they're so capital intensive. So that becomes a real positive for us compared to other states. What that really means is other states have to offer big incentives just to compete with us in this area because of the tax reform that we've done, which eliminated tangible personal property tax. The other thing that's happening is we're getting more recognition that it's an improved business climate. And Chief Executive Magazine earlier this year, we were the fastest improving state in the United States. Other CEOs, other leaders like Jim from Caterpillar, pay attention to that when they look at making decisions on where they're going to make investment. The other big advantage we have in the context, and this is a stark contrast, I should say, to the Williston community in North Dakota, is our logistical advantage. When you look at Ohio, you look at Canton, and you can be within 60% of U.S. and Canadian manufacturing within 600 miles. That's an incredible advantage we have. Related to that is our infrastructure, our highway systems, our rivers, our lakes. It was great to see Jim talk a little bit about interlake transportation. And that's the advantage we have that, quite honestly, you don't have in many of the other shale plays around the United States. So that helps us quite a bit as we look at taking advantage of this opportunity. And then thirdly is our workforce. We're not a little state, we're a big state. We have 6 million labor force, and we have a very rich history and education with colleges, universities, community colleges, vocational schools. Really our goal now, and really this is a major priority for Governor Kasich, is get better alignment of our educational resources to what industries really need. But it's a big advantage that we have a large workforce. As workforce tightens in the Gulf Coast, I think more companies are going to be looking at Ohio as a place to do business. Just a couple more points here on the context of why Ohio. We are a large state, so we're the 7th most populated state. We have a large gross state product. We have a large economy, which means we have a lot of the services that are needed. I know one of the things that you've seen here in Canton is a number of professional service organizations coming here, opening up offices, engineering, law, consulting. These are important aspects of growing the Ohio economy. We have it because we have a large economy to start with 27 headquartered companies here in the Fortune 500 list. Timken's certainly a leader in that area. And then we also have a strong credit rating. It's been actually increasing when others have been going down. So that's the context that we have. If we didn't have a positive context, it would be very difficult for us to compete with other states to take full advantage of the Utica. Now let's turn into what's happening. And I think I was spoken up in this area a number of times, but I recently shared this at Youngstown, and some of you may have seen it, but it's kind of interesting to look at where we were at the end of 2012 in the Utica activity. Through the end of 2012, so this is actually 2011, 2012, we had issued about 485 permits. Today, it's 927. So just in another 9 months, we've nearly doubled the number of permits that have issued. Now, it's still significantly less than the Bakken and the Eagleford plays, Eagleford in Texas. But let's remember, those are world-class plays. They'll compete against any oil project around the world. This is still very exciting to see here in Ohio, this kind of accelerated activity. Total number of wells drilled more than doubled than where we were at the end of the year of last year. Wells producing quadrupled from where we were at the end of last year. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute because of the infrastructure. Interestingly, the number of rigs in the state are about the same. Now, what you've seen, in fact, I think it was in today's Wall Street Journal, there was an article about this, talking about the efficiency gains. The companies that are doing the drilling are finding how to do it more efficiently. They can drill 30% more with the same rig than they did just a year or two ago. And we're seeing some of that here. So the rig count hasn't changed as much, but the activity has certainly accelerated in 2013 in the Utica. One of the big things that's reason for that, for the acceleration of activity, is really covered in the next two slides. And that's been the development of the midstream business. Upstream being the drilling, the leasing, all the service companies that supply the drilling and completion of wells. Upstream. Midstream being the processing, the fractionation, the pipelines that's needed to get the products to the marketplace. Just 24 months ago, we had none of this. We didn't have a midstream industry in our state. And now today, nearly $6.5 billion have been, really most of that's been already invested, and certainly, some of that has been committed by very, world-class companies in this area. So now we do have processing online, both at Mark West and M3, the M3 Access Joint Venture Group. We also have fractionation occurring with the M3 group as well, where actually the wet gas is being broken in to its components of propane, butane, ethane, and others. NiSource is opening up a processing plant over in Mahoning County. The Dominion Cayman, they're planning to build additional processors in eastern Ohio. Spectra has committed to a natural gas pipeline on the eastern part of the state. Enterprise is building an ethane pipeline that the last I saw, they're on target to begin taking ethane from the Marcellus in Utica and taking it to the Gulf Coast, and that should be operational first quarter of 2014. We also have Kinder Morgan and Mark West teaming up to put another processor just south of here in Tuscarawas County. They're also talking about additional pipeline to take natural gas liquids to the Gulf Coast. The Bluegrass Williams project is another project to take wet gas, get it to the markets in the Gulf Coast. And then PVR Partners was an interesting one, a little smaller project, but that was really a dry gas pipeline gathering in the far eastern part of our state. Added up, it's $6.5 billion, and I don't think I've counted it all. So this has been a major undertaking, and I think kind of a demonstration of why it's good to do business in Ohio is being a brand new industry. It took a lot of coordinated effort, the governor's office, the Ohio EPA, Department of Commerce, in order to get these multi-billion-dollar projects up and running in such a short time frame. And a credit to a lot of the people, the companies, and their suppliers. And I'm sure Kat was very involved in providing equipment to those projects. So this has been really a major development, and because of this, we've seen the acceleration of number of wells now producing and increased drilling activity in the state. We needed to have the midstream online for that to happen, and that now has occurred and will continue to add to that over the next few months and years. What this really results in is a kind of a network of pipelines, processors in eastern Ohio, western Pennsylvania, and the northern panhandle of West Virginia. And they're interconnected. And this is why the downstream companies like Dow and others are really paying attention to this region, because now this region is becoming a major producer of natural gas liquids, which is critical feedstock to the chemical businesses that also feed into the polymer side. So this emerging network of assets and infrastructure is what's really making the difference. Now, Ohio has an advantage because we've always had, if you see a couple of the pipelines that come up from the southwest part of the state, we've always had access to Gulf Coast natural gas. The Rex pipeline that was built just a few years ago brought natural gas from the western states. And now we have Marcellus and Utica in our own backyard, making Ohio a real nexus for natural gas resources, which really helps us and our users of natural gas get very competitive pricing. So that helps all of us as consumers, and it certainly helps the large natural gas users, like was presented earlier by Timken. So that's helping us as we look at working with companies that are big gas users. You know, Ohio becomes an advantaged place to locate. Let's talk a little bit about the downstream advantage that we have. As we I like the focus of this event in the fact that it's focused on downstream opportunities. First of all, Ohio is a global polymer industry leader today. When you look at what it means to our state compared to others, we're very high. It's called location quotient. It's very high in Ohio. The polymer industry was founded here, really kind of came out of the rubber industry. We have a strong world-class university system. We look at the Polymer Institute at University of Akron, some of the advanced materials work that goes on in Dayton and Ohio State. We have a lot of strength on the engineering side and the polymer area. So that's a real advantage for us. We also have 4 refineries when you look at the downstream opportunities. We have the one here in Canton, and then 2 in Toledo and 1 in Lima. Husky operates the one in Lima. They're a joint venture partner with BP in Toledo. PBF Energy operates the other one, Toledo, and then Marathon, who's headquartered in Findlay, Ohio, owns and operates the refinery right here in Canton. This is important because as we look at the condensate that's being produced in the Utica, where's it going to go? Can our Ohio refineries benefit? And clearly the Canton refinery has been using condensate produced right here in Ohio, in the Utica, is being refined right here in Canton, Ohio. So we're working closely with the refineries to see how we can obtain other benefits for the Ohio refineries as a result of condensate. By the way, on condensate, I think, up to this point, in the early days, it was a lot about the leasing, and then about the drilling, and then the regulations, and then the midstream, and then the processing and all that. I think right now we're starting to put more attention on what's going to happen with the condensate that's being produced. And you've heard that there's a wet gas window, but just to the west of the wet gas window is a volatile window that has the potential to produce significant volumes of condensate on top of what's already being co-produced with the natural gas liquids. So condensate is going to be a big topic that's going to raise a lot of questions about rail. How do we get this condensate to the marketplace? Transloading facilities like in Columbiana County to get it onto the river, to get it to other refineries. This whole movement of condensate is going to be an important topic as we go forward. So what does Utica Shale provide us? It provides a low-cost, reliable supply of natural gas and natural gas liquids. Both are important because these companies that make these products, they're big gas users, so the natural gas price is important, but also the natural gas liquid, access to it, is also very important. The other thing we see in downstream, if you look at Ohio, is that we have also a very strong specialty chemical. An easy way to think about Ohio and polymers and chemicals is this. We are very good at taking base chemicals and adding value to them that are then used by other companies in their processes and products. Same thing on the polymer side. We're very good at taking resins that come out of a cracker and then using those resins to the cracker and their derivative plants, like a polyethylene plant, taking those resins, adding value to them, color, different materials that change the attributes, and then getting them to companies that make things out of them, like auto parts. This is what we're really good at in Ohio. And whether the product is converted in Ohio, Pennsylvania, or West Virginia, or if the natural gas liquids are converted to other products in the Gulf Coast, we still benefit because the U.S. advantage is lower feedstock cost, which will advantage our downstream users of those products as feedstocks that in turn then go into parts, materials that are used in the auto industry, aviation industry, even white goods like Whirlpool. All those companies in Ohio use parts that are made from plastics that the feedstock cost is critical to whether they can compete globally or not. So we're going to benefit. Either way, we'll benefit in Ohio. Maybe a side point, at JobsOhio, we focus on 9 sectors. So I focus on energy, chemicals, and polymers, 2 of them. But manufacturing, which would include and the auto, which would include all the auto part companies that we have in our state. Aviation, we're really big in aviation and #1 supplier to the European Airbus. We're also a big supplier to Boeing. We have GE Aviation in our state. So we look at all these sectors. That's important because the opportunity is how these feed into the other sectors. So the better job we do of recruiting auto part makers in our state, that drives more business for the polymer companies. And then the polymer companies now have a global advantage because their feedstocks are coming down. So that's how it all works together and why it's important to have all 9 sectors that we look at, not just 1 or 2, because of how they work together in strengthening the economy. Another big advantage we have in Ohio as we look at taking advantage of the downstream opportunities is our engineering strength. And here's a list. I think it's about a dozen schools in Ohio that offer engineering degrees. We are ranked 8th nationally in the total number of engineering degrees we confer when you look at undergraduate and graduate level degrees. When you look at Case Western, you look at Akron, Ohio State, Cincinnati, plus these other universities, we really have something to offer manufacturers, chemical companies, and polymer companies that are interested in developing products and making products in our state. Plus we have a world-class petroleum engineering program at Marietta College on top of that, which is a very strong program that's important to the oil and gas industry. So this is another strength that we are working on and market when we look to recruit companies into Ohio. Now the value chain is in natural gas liquids that are being produced in the Utica. That becomes separated out and fractionated into ethane, propane, and butane. Those products then can get converted into ethylene, propylene, and butadiene. Now, a lot of the question is, where's that going to happen? Now, the refineries do some of this today, but where's the rest of this? Where's this ethane going to be used? Who's going to use the propane? Where's the butane going to go? And there's lots of debate about it. Some of it will displace propane, will be used in our markets here and in the Northeast. It'll displace some of the propane that has been shipped up from the Gulf Coast to our region. But there's likely to be much more than what we can use in our area and in the Northeast, so it's got to go somewhere. Is it going to be exported? Is it going to go to the Gulf Coast? There's companies down there looking at taking propane and converting it directly to polypropylene. Taking butane, converting it directly into butadiene. And then, of course, you all know about the crackers that are taking ethane to make ethylene out of it. So this is where the real debate's been. Where's this going to happen? And certainly we've been competing along with Pennsylvania and West Virginia to try to capture companies here. And as you all know, there's been one company that's announced that they're seriously looking at it. That's Shell. Wall Street Journal on Monday, the headline was, Pennsylvania's hope fades for Shell ethylene plant. And it went on to give some reasons why the writer thought that Shell may not build the plant. I don't know if Shell will do it or not. The only piece of information I saw in the article that was a little bit new from my standpoint was that they said Shell has backed off the mid-2014 date for a final investment decision, and they now haven't committed to when they will make a final decision. The article goes on to talk about how difficult it is for our region to compete with the Gulf Coast because of the massive infrastructure that exists there. You have multiple cracker facilities already there. You have many derivative plants that take the ethylene and make other products out of it. They can swap. If one shuts down, the other can take over their customers for them. All kinds of advantages that there. So the question is, will any of them build in our region? I think the jury's still out. I think there's still an opportunity, and here's where I think the opportunity really lies. I think it lies mostly with international companies that don't have a position in the U.S. marketplace. They look at the global advantage that we have now in the U.S. You're looking at the cost of ethane, the natural gas liquid volumes that are being produced, and all of a sudden we have a global advantage in the United States. If you're not producing in the United States and you're in this business, you want to be here. Now, why would we have an advantage over the Gulf Coast? Well, if you're a new entrant, you don't have an existing plant. Usually it's more cost competitive to expand an existing plant than it is to build a new one someplace else. That's why the Shell initiative is pretty bold. But if you don't have an existing plant, you don't have that option. So what I think and what our team thinks is that international companies that are looking to get a position in North America will potentially look at our region. And here's why. We have the feedstock, but also you are more likely to get to the marketplace quicker in Ohio than you are in Texas, Louisiana. We have better regulatory environment. We have more delegated authority at the Ohio EPA. We have a strong workforce. We have many advantages. There's a lot of projects stacked up in the Gulf Coast. So one potential advantage we have is the ability to get a project up and running more quickly here than in the Gulf Coast. We're certainly working hard at it to see if we can make that happen. There are companies looking, and we'll see. But that's not the only thing we're working on. We're also working on other opportunities related to this. Expansion in our existing chemical companies. Expansion opportunities in our existing polymer companies. We're also looking at companies that are involved in boiler conversions, CNG, and I'm glad that you're focusing on that the rest of the afternoon. Gas-fired power plants. There's two companies that have talked about and have started the process of building gas-fired power plants in Carroll County, just east of here. We've brought on a technical consultant to help us that's run large chemical plants in the Gulf Coast from former BASF person, so that when we meet with the chemical companies, we can talk the technical talk with them as well. And then, of course, workforce development. We're putting a lot of emphasis here. Because of the tightening workforce in the Gulf Coast, to the extent we're successful in having a highly trained workforce in the chemical, downstream, polymer area, we can then have a huge advantage. And again, that's why Governor Kasich put the Office of Workforce Transformation directly reporting to him. There's been a major survey effort out so we know what the job projections are, in-job demands are over the next few years. A lot of focus is going to continue to be by JobsOhio, by the governor's team, is on workforce development. So those are just a few of the insights I have on how we're working together. We're optimistic of what's going to happen, but again, it's going to take a real unified commitment from people in this room, from the Canton Regional Chamber, the Stark County Development Board, all of us across the state, the policymakers, in order for us to take advantage of this tremendous opportunity. I'm happy to take any questions, David.
Thank you. Thank you, David. I want to stay on the idea of the small gas-fired electric power plants for just a moment. What are the conditions under which those make sense for investors? What are you seeing as the main ingredients for making that work? And then the second part of that question is, if you see a lot of growth in this area, at what point does it challenge the current regulations and policy regarding utilities in the state of Ohio?
Okay, David, in electric generation, everybody knows that Ohio, since the late 1990s, has been moving towards a competitive marketplace. And we all now can buy, if you live in Ohio and you're a customer in Ohio, you have a choice of who you buy your electricity from. And, we still have some transition going on with a few of the utilities. But by 2015, I think all the transitions is finished, and we've taken yet another step to having a true competitive marketplace in Ohio. So that kind of complicates things a little bit when it comes to building new generation, because new generation can come from anybody. It doesn't come just from our utility that builds the plant, puts it into the rate base. So what's happening now as far as the dynamic of will new gas plants be built in Ohio? Well, first of all, you need a site. We have sites. You need water. We have water. You need a strong transmission system. We have a strong transmission system. So those are all the pluses. The big challenge that I'm seeing right now, and we have the feedstock. We have access to competitive price natural gas. And they're starting to see, confidently looking out to the future that the natural gas will be competitive in this region. It'll be certainly very competitive on a global sense. The challenge on building new power plants in Ohio is, what do you get for the price of power? And we're in a PJM system, which is a regional system, and they have a forward price curve of about 3 years. And right now, it's pretty low. So the challenge, I think, for the developers of the power plants is, can I get enough revenue committed to borrow the money to build the plant? And I think that's where the big issue is. Who's going to buy the power? How long of a commitment will they make to purchase it? And what price will I get for the power? And if you look at the price of power right now, for the capacity, the power that you buy from the power plant, it's pretty low compared to where it has been in the past. I think that's the big challenge, David. Now, as the economy improves, I would expect those prices to improve, and maybe the developers will build. The other thing they're watching closely is the shutdown of coal plants. And they're saying, well, if plants shut down, maybe that'll improve the price of power, and I can justify building the plant. So I think the developers are watching closely, which coal plants are being shut down and what that might do to the price of power. So regulatory-wise, I think a lot of the regulatory issues have been addressed, really, by going to a competitive system. There's still some issues that are a little bit technical, like on backup power and things like that, that'll continue to be addressed. But I think by and large, most of them have been addressed.
Question in the back here.
That was probably more detailed than most of you ever wanted to know about generation in Ohio, but yes, sir.
We have heard today about the importance of infrastructure to job creation
Yes.
and job retention. In the eastern part of Ohio, I think we've been sorely neglected in terms of transportation. Now, Stark County is well served north and south and west, but to the east, into where this shale drilling activity is taking place in Columbiana and Carroll County, to the the port facility on the Ohio River and the Pittsburgh market. Can we expect anything from the state of Ohio in terms of promoting job retention, creation, getting a highway between Stark County and Route 11?
Are you talking about Route 30? Is that what you're
Yes,
talking
sir.
about? So we work closely with ODOT, and of course, you know, the ODOT, Jerry Ray would be the right person to ask that question about where that fits into other priorities, you know, around the state. And I can't really speak to the Route 30 situation. I do know that being able to take the money, the bond money off of the turnpike is generating another $1 billion of investment that we wouldn't have had that not gone forward. So that's a real plus to get more money into infrastructure in Ohio. It is important. I think we meet with ODOT on a regular basis about projects we're working on, and when we hear companies talk about issues around roadway access, highways, they are very engaged. I can tell you they're very focused on the true driver for the decision making is safety and economic growth. That's what's really driving the ODOT decision making on priorities. So all I can say is that they're very engaged. We work with them closely. I can't answer the Route 30 specifically. Maybe you could get Jerry Ray here next year and he could talk a little bit more about that. But it is important. We have seen, you know, Carroll County, I've met with the engineer in Carroll County, and, you know, it's unbelievable what's happened to the roads in Carroll County thanks to shale development. You know, the millions of dollars of road improvement that's happened because of shale. So, but it is a topic that we look at, and it's very involved in almost every project. And there is monies that are allocated to projects to help improve roadways, to help make sure that we get the jobs created associated with that project.
I'll ask a dumb question for myself and for those who need it asked in the audience. Tell us about condensate and what commercial products are derived from it as compared with more traditional crude oil.
Sure, and I'll give you a very much, because my knowledge of this is probably just slightly more than yours, David, but as I understand it, condensate it's like an oil, but it's a lighter grade, so it's not the same as oils. Now, what's interesting in Ohio, particularly in the western refineries, with Husky being a Canadian company, a big developer of Canadian crude, Toledo and Lima are really moving towards burning the heavier crudes, or refining the heavier crudes. Now you got the condensate that's lighter coming in, and you can't just retool these refineries without a lot of money and a lot of time to be able to change your mix. So that's one of the challenges. Now the Marathon refinery here is able to use some of that condensate, but there's a limit on what they're going to be able to use, the Marathon people tell me. The condensate, as I understand it, it's actually fairly close to a natural gasoline. I've been told by industry people that it would not take that much refinement in order for us to use it in our vehicles, because it's closer to a natural gasoline than it is to some of the heavier crudes. Now, if there's some of you that actually know this better than I, and I just butchered that answer, please stand up and we'll get your perspective on this, but that's my understanding of condensate. In Ohio, we've produced about 13,000 barrels of oil a year over the last few years. I've seen projections that we'll be producing 30,000 barrels of condensate within months, and with the potential to go to 200,000 barrels of condensate. So it's significant, and it trades at about, I think oil's at 97, condensate may be trading at $80. So it's a high value product, and it's going to add significant economic benefit to our state, the condensate production.
Anything else? I have one more question. If Ohio is the global polymer leader today, who's our competitor and how far behind are they?
Yeah, it's when I look at competition, it's interesting when you look at competition for the big producers of the base, the resin materials. That's clearly the Gulf Coast. But it's interesting. You look at countries like Saudi Arabia that has a huge cost advantage on the feedstock. They're working very hard to build out these derivative plants so that they can produce, the polymers they have a company called Sabic, which is now a global leader in this area. So I don't know who would be our most closest competitor. I think we have a significant advantage in Ohio if you get closer to the marketplace on the polymers, when you add the additives and things like that. But these companies, I will say this, David, these companies that produce compounds and things with resins in the polymers, they want to put their facilities where the customers are. So the stronger Ohio's economy is, the better job we do with the auto parts and others, the more they're going to build their facilities here.
One more question from a guest here.
Yes.
Sometimes I hear the term used, the war on coal in Ohio and in Pennsylvania, West Virginia. If the natural gas industry is displacing any coal industry workforce, are they able to take advantage of that now freed up workforce? Are they hiring any of the coal people?
I don't know I can't give you specific examples of that. It is interesting that where you've had our traditional coal production is also where the shale is. I know geologically there's a reason for that. That does provide that opportunity. We haven't had, in the last 24 months, significant layoffs in Ohio. We've actually had one coal mine do an expansion. I think in some ways, a lot of the lost coal jobs have kind of predated, that. Now, it's still a battle for the existing producers because, if the power plants they supply get shut down, if they can't export, exports helped a lot of them. If you can't export, then, it's going to result in reductions. So, you look at the skill sets of a coal miner, there's a lot of transferability, I think, there. I haven't seen it yet, but clearly that opportunity is there now, and we do have people that are looking at how to retrain people to take advantage of emerging shale jobs. So, good point.
David, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, David.